Hello, I'm Thomas Weber, and we are going to talk about Porter's Five Forces analysis. Porter's Five Forces analysis is a way to understand what's going on in an industry. So the questions are always about the industry, not about a particular firm or town or anything like that. And there's five forces, so we're looking at how do those five forces put pressure on the industry. So we've got the threat of new entrants, we've got the bargaining power of suppliers, the bargaining power of buyers, the threat of substitutes, and the intensity of rivalry in the industry. And we look at whether those forces are high or low and how they all come together to determine whether the industry is attractive or not. Doesn't mean it's good to get into, it's just, is it attractive? Is there profit potential? So, the threat of new entrants is looking at basically how easy is it for an entrant to come into the industry. So this is looking at a firm that's not inside of the industry whatsoever. And what we look at with this are the barriers to entry. So if we have low barriers to entry, then we have high threat of new entrants. So some of the things we look at for the threat of the barriers to entry are the economies of scale. So Walmart has huge economies of scale. It would be hard to compete with Walmart. We look at the capital requirements to get in. So if it's very expensive to get into an industry, it means it's a high barrier entry, which just means it's a low threat of new entrants. So Apple spent $2.6 billion to create the iPhone. That's high capital. Another thing that's important is retaliation. So for those firms that already exist in the industry, what's the likelihood that they will retaliate against a new firm? If there's low retaliation, that's a low barrier to entry, which means it's a high threat of new entrants. How are the brands? So if the brands are strong brands, that means the barriers to entry are high. So in the soft drink industry, Coke and Pepsi, strong brands, high barriers to entry, low threat of new entrants. Next one is bargaining power of suppliers, and in this case, what gives the suppliers the ability to bargain with industry? So some of the things that strengthen the bargaining power of suppliers are there few suppliers. So if there's only 3 suppliers for something, that means it's more difficult for the industry to bargain with those suppliers. Are the suppliers' products differentiated? So in the computer industry, we have Intel and AMD making the most chips for the computers. They have very differentiated products for the computer chips. Are there how critical are the suppliers' products? So in the computer industry, the Intel chip and AMD chip are very critical, which actually gives the chip makers power. So the criticality. And how easy is it for the suppliers to forward integrate, which means they could move into the industry. Next is bargaining power of buyers. So in this case, it's what gives the entities that are buying from the industry, and this could be end users. So we would be buying products from Best Buy, but Best Buy is buying products from electronic suppliers. So what gives the entity that buys from the industry basically the power to bargain over the industry? So in this case, we're going to look at, again, are there few buyers? If there's very few buyers, then that gives the buyers more power. Do the buyers make large purchases? So if they buy large amounts, like Walmart buys from Procter & Gamble, the buyers have more power. Large amounts. are the products that the industry makes standardized. So if the industry has standardized products, then the buyers have more power because they can go to more places to find standardized products. If the industry is commodities, it's easy to go to a bunch of different places to find commodities. Commodities are things like tomatoes or iron or things like that. And then switching costs. So if the switching costs are low, that gives the buyers more power because it's inexpensive for them to go to different places. So if we look at the soft drink industry, how much does it cost for us to go get a Coke in one place or a Pepsi in another? Very little. So we have low switching cost if we are buyers of soft drinks. Next one is threat of substitutes, and a substitute is something that serves the same purpose as the product inside the industry, but it's outside of the industry. So if we're looking at the soft drink industry, Coke and Pepsi have their soft drinks, but something that can serve the same purpose as a soft drink is water. That's outside of the soft drink industry. So the main thing with threat of substitutes, do they exist? So is there something outside of the industry that can serve the same purpose, and are they less expensive? So if they're less expensive, it's easier to go outside and get that product. The last one is the intensity of rivalry within the industry itself. So this is looking at the competitors who are producing similar products. So again, are there many or few competitors? If there's few competitors, that's going to increase rivalry, as well as if there's, because the firms will be fighting for their market share. If there's many competitors, that's going to increase rivalry because they're going to be fighting for little pieces of the product. Are the competitors large? So if there's large competitors, that will increase the rivalry because they're going to make sure nobody steals their market share. Again, is the product a commodity? If it's a commodity, then that's going to increase the rivalry because firms are going to be trying to make sure their product gets bought, and commodities are generally cheaper than differentiated products. Is the industry slow growing? So if it's slow growing, there's going to be more rivalry because there's less market share to go around, you might say. And is the industry strategically important? So if a firm depends on a particular industry, it's going to do everything it can to make sure that there's they keep their power within the industry. So we look at all of these forces and we determine how strong they are. So when we do the assessment, we say, is the threat of new entrants high or low? Bargaining power buyers high or low? The threat of substitutes high or low? Bargaining power of suppliers high or low, and the intensity of rivalry high or low. And then, once we looked at all that, we determine, is it attractive? That does not mean that if they're all high, that it's attractive, or if they're all low, that it's attractive, or it's all high, they're not attractive. We have to make an assessment. One of these forces could be more important than all the others and make an industry unattractive. So if we look at the intensity of rivalry in the soft drink industry, just that would make it unattractive because we have Coke and Pepsi. It doesn't even matter what the other four are all about. So we have to do our own assessment of all of those forces. And once we've made our assessment, we can determine whether it's attractive or not. That doesn't mean that it's a good industry to get into. Doesn't mean it's a bad industry to be in. That just gives us information about the industry. So if we look at an industry such as the software, the soft drink industry, and we realize that the threat of new entrants is actually very low, we don't have to worry about threat of new entrants. If we figure out that the bargaining power of buyers is very high because there's lots and lots of buyers. The bargaining power of buyers is very low because there's lots and lots of buyers. The switching costs are low. Then we can say, what can we do to change that? Can we somehow make it so that our product is more unique and make it so that buyers want to come to buy our product? So once we look at all of these forces, we can figure out, either as a new entrant or as a firm in there or as a supplier or as a buyer or even as a substitute, what can we do to change the strength of those forces to make it so that we, as one of those members of that the environment, can compete a little bit better. So then we'll talk more about what mitigates forces in the next talk, but that's the basic overview of what Porter's Five Forces is all about.